Muscle tissue is a special type of tissue that is designed for contraction. All muscle tissues contract. I'm going to show you what that means. And if you're listening to my video right now off of Canvas, you're not going to be able to see this. So I apologize. I don't see a camera option on here. So I'm going to pause this. So when all your muscle tissues contract, they produce some sort of a body movement. And there's 3 types of muscle tissue. So the skeletal muscle tissue, when it contracts, moves your skeleton or your bones. So those are your major body muscles. Well, there's a lot of little ones too, but like your biceps and your quads and your hamstrings. And then you've got like hundreds of other little muscles everywhere else. We'll have an entire unit on skeletal muscles, but they're responsible for moving your bones. So we can even add that in there, movement of bones. So that's skeletal muscle tissue. Cardiac muscle tissue is found where? The heart. And when the cardiac muscle tissue contracts, what does it make the heart do? Makes it beat. And when your heart beats, what does it actually do? Pumps blood. So that's because of special cardiac muscle tissue. So your heart is a big muscle. The other type of muscle tissue is smooth muscle tissue. And it's called smooth because when we look at it under the microscope, it's going to look smooth compared to cardiac and skeletal muscle. You find smooth muscle in the walls of hollow contracting organs. So it's in your blood vessels. Your blood vessels, some of them have to contract to help move blood. Like your heart would be considered like a really big blood vessel. But your heart's not smooth muscle, it's special muscle. Your bladder has to contract so you can empty it. So it's lined with smooth muscle. I'm not sure which part of the respiratory tract would have it. A lot of your respiratory tract is connective tissue and blood vessels. But the digestive system definitely is lined with smooth muscle. And the reproductive tracts, yeah, I guess you got to move stuff along the reproductive tracts. And actually, while I'm here, I'm going to show you something. I don't think we talked about this that I recall. I always have this for 7th grade, but not for anatomy for some reason. But most of your organs usually have all 4 types of tissue. So, for instance, if we talk about your stomach, let's see if I can draw a stomach. Oh, that's an excellent stomach. That's what it looks like. Okay, but it usually has all 4 types of tissue. Oh, you know what? You can't see all of it. Oh, the screen's up here. There you go. So we have the esophagus is at the top and the small intestine's at the bottom. But the very inside layer of the stomach would be lined with what type of tissue? The very inside of the 4 types we've talked about so far. Yes. So epithelial, it would be on the inside because epithelial helps to absorb and secrete. So it's got to absorb the food and secretes like mucus and stuff to help digest, well, digestive juices. And then, let's see, you've got the connective tissues. Give that another color. That's green. Got to hold everything together. And it wouldn't contract. And let's say that, oh yeah, connective. And red is smooth muscle. And your muscles actually don't work unless they have an input from the nervous system. So all your muscles are, we call it innervated, which means they are supplied by, you can't see that, can you? Supplied by nerves. Classification of muscle cells. So these are terms you're going to need to know when we talk about each type of muscle cell. So these terms help us define which type of muscle tissue we're looking at, whether we're looking at skeletal, cardiac, or smooth. So here's some new vocabulary for you. Don't you just love new vocabulary?
Nope. No.
Striated, non-striated, voluntary, involuntary, and for some reason, well, multinucleate. They're missing the other one. We'll get to it. Striated. Have we talked about striated before?
No.
Like striped. Striated, like striped. You ever talk about striations with rocks in geology? No? Okay. But anyways, in muscles that are striated will have a banded appearance or a striped appearance. So they're going to look striped under the microscope. Non-striated would be the opposite. It would be smooth or not banded, not striped. Muscle cells can have a single nucleus. If we say that muscle cells have more than one nucleus are multinucleate, do you guys know the term for having one nucleus? Maybe it's not a term. I was thinking of unicellular, but uninucleate maybe? Let's say that's a word. So some muscle cells have a single nucleus, whereas some of them have more than one nucleus per cell. Muscle cells can also be controlled voluntarily, which means consciously. So of the three types of muscle tissue, skeletal, smooth, and cardiac, which one do you think you control voluntarily, consciously? Skeletal. Do you consciously make your heart pump?
Yes.
Think about all the work that would take.
Not a lot.
You'd forget 1 second, you'd be dead. Well, forget for a little while. And then, so the heart and your smooth muscles are going to be involuntary, which means they're automatic. Or you don't have to think about it. Go ahead and copy down skeletal muscle tissue. Whoops. Skeletal muscle tissue. And you can either list or bullet point the description of it. The cells are long, cylindrical, striated, and multinucleate. The cells of muscle tissue are long, cylindrical, striated, and multinucleate. So when you look at muscle tissue under the microscope, it's kind of going to look like fish, like a fillet of fish. Kind of like this sort of does. It'll, maybe not the shape of it, but you can see the banding pattern there, and it's long and cylindrical. For location, just probably write skeletal muscles. Well, wait, never mind, that doesn't make sense. Connected to bones. That's probably what you should write.
Location.
Yeah, connected to bones. And then what we can do for functions, we're not going to list all of those functions, but you can write functions. I'll get my highlighter out here. It moves or stabilizes the positions of the skeleton. Moves or stabilizes the position of the skeleton. We're going to skip down here to generates heat. Let's do those two. So like it generates heat when you're doing what? When you're moving and when you're shivering. So all of that is going to generate heat. That's why you shiver, is to stay warm. So when your muscles contract, they give off heat. You can see here in the pictures the striations or the stripes. And you can see there's more than one nucleus per cell. So you don't see the entire cell here, you see part of it. So that we could zoom in, but you can see more than one nucleus per cell. And the nuclei are, this picture on the right is what you'd see under the microscope. When we're looking at muscle tissue, it's going to be pink under the microscope. And the nuclei is just going to be a little darker pink or red. And then the muscle fiber itself is like the muscle cell. So when you are labeling on your lab on Monday, you can label things like striations, nuclei,
Do we have to do a lab over this? What is happening?
and
What's wrong with labs?
I'm going to go ahead and write this slide. So the cardiac muscle tissue. Whoops. Sorry. Unlike the skeletal muscle tissues, which were long and cylindrical, these are short and branched. They're short and branched. You can see I'll kind of point out a branched part here on the picture. Did you see where I put that green line? So that cell, here's the entire cell. Whoa, it's actually branched a lot. Oh, it's branched a lot. But the cells are branched out here. They're not just cylinders in a row. They're branched out. They have a single nucleus, so they would be uninucleate. Each cell is connected to another cell by these lines that are called intercalated discs. So these vertical lines here that are not the stripes, the other lines, are called intercalated discs. They connect one cell to another cell. They're like the junction point. So I highlighted those intercalated discs in green as well. So they're branched. How many nuclei per cell? One. And each cell is connected to another cell by a intercalated discs. Very good. The location is obviously the heart. And functions is circulate blood and maintain blood pressure. When you're labeling on your lab, you can label the nuclei. You can label intercalated discs. You can label branches, those branched areas. You can label striations. So this is striated too, so you guys see the striations. Does anybody not see how the striations are different than the intercalated discs?
The intercalated discs are zigzags.
Yeah, they are zigzags and they're dark, like black looking. The picture on the right is going to be similar to what you'll see on the microscope slide. It's really hard to see those striations, but they're there. Like we'll see on the next slide, the smooth is going to be really smooth. This looks, these striations are kind of vague. And you can see the nuclei in there. You have a question? They're really hard to see.
More like maybe horizontal.
Well, they go this way. They're really, really vague. They kind of look like waves.
I can see them in the bottom, go in between striations and intercalated disc, kind of. It's like, yeah, right there.
Yeah, they're
Right
very,
there.
very vague. They just look, I don't know how to describe it in words. Hairy? I don't know, fuzzy?
But
Alright, smooth muscle tissue. These cells are short and spindle shaped, which I'll show you here in a minute. They're non-striated. They have a single central nucleus per cell. So do you guys have any idea what spindle shaped is?
ooh, spindle fibers. Yeah.
Where'd we learn spindle? That sounds...
Well, you kind of covering up the notes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But it's kind of like a flat football, I guess, where it's just, it's...
Are they crossed at the end, aren't they?
well, they pinch at the ends. They're kind of oh yeah, mitosis is where we have the spindle fibers. But it's a little fatter in the middle and pinched at the ends. Hey, that's not drawing. Ooh, erase that.
What about none of these nails? One of y'all sees
There, that last picture I drew is the best looking spindle shape I got for you. But they're short, so you can see each end of it, and they have one cell or nucleus per cell. They're not striped, so I'm going to go ahead and outline one spindle or one muscle cell here on that picture. Get my black going here. Okay, so in that picture, I've outlined one muscle cell. It's got one nucleus in it. It's not branched. It's not striped. It's short. It's smooth. And the locations are, I think we already wrote those, didn't we? Did you already write those locations on that other slide?
probably.
I'll probably just copy and paste them. So the function actually, I'm not going to put the function, well, you might want them because you're going to want them for your lab on Monday. But it depends where the smooth muscle is at. So if it's in the digestive tract, it moves food. If it's in the bladder, it moves urine. If it's in the reproductive tract, it moves reproductive tract secretions. If it's in the blood vessels, it regulates the diameter of the blood vessels. Alright, just copy what I highlight here, okay? We'll shorten this up for you. Neural tissue is the same thing as nervous or nerve tissue. It conducts electrical impulses. That's all you need from this slide. Alright, two types of neural cells. When I have you guys look up the nervous tissue, I want you finding the neurons. I only have one good slide of that, and I had that out. But you're going to look for the neuron, which we'll see. And the neuron is a fancy term for a nerve cell. Nervous tissue also has neuroglia, which you don't need to really worry about. Well, actually, you'll see neuroglia, and I probably want you to label it if you see it, but they're supporting cells. We will be looking at these, but I know that when you guys were in 7th grade, we've talked about these before, so this is not the first time you've heard about a neuron. But parts of a neuron, okay? There's 3 main parts: the cell body, the dendrites, and the axon. The cell body is the main part. It's the part that looks like a cell. It has the nucleus in it. In fact, I'll draw you a cute little picture here while you are taking notes. Okay, there's your cell body. Around the cell body, you're going to have these little fibers called dendrites. The dendrites are branches extending from the cell body. They receive an incoming signal. They receive the incoming signal from another nervous cell, neuron. And then you have your axon. It extends, it's like a tail that extends outward from the cell body, and it's going to send a signal. So it's like a tail, and it carries outgoing electrical signals. So I'll draw the direction of the chemical signal then with that arrow. Let's go from the dendrite through the axon. I'll throw some more knowledge at you here. These axons, okay, they're wrapped around by fat called myelin tissue. That makes the signal travel faster. So they're wrapped around by this, it's called a myelin sheath, and it's really just fat, and it speeds up the chemical or electrical signal. Some people have disorders where that myelin sheath gets injured or destroyed, and it makes that chemical signal go slower. Like, I think people with nervous system disorders like MS, they have problems with that. When you're looking at the nervous tissue under the microscope, like I said, I only have one good slide of it. You're really just going to see the cell body here. The rest of it, you're not going to really see the dendrites and the axons. You're going to see that. So you can't see these dendrites very well, and then the axons over here. But you can see those neuroglia. They're just going to be purple dots around there. So this picture I have here on the bottom is what the nerve cell really looks like, but you're not going to be able to see all that under the microscope. We just don't have that good of slides and that good of microscopes. So, what direction is the chemical signal going to go on that cell on the bottom? Left to right or right to left? Left to right. So, from the dendrites through the cell body down the axon. So you got the axon, the cell body, and the dendrites.